In this video, we're continuing our respiratory physiology series by talking about alveolar ventilation and perfusion. Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to my channel. If you've ever wanted to know what a mechanism behind low oxygen saturation is, then you might want to stick around because this content is for you. In this video, we're going to start diving into the most important facet of our lives, gas exchange at the alveoli. Literally though, because without it, none of us would be alive today. So while you're welcome to start pondering your life, you could also just grab some of that productivity juice or something that tastes good and keep watching. So let's talk big picture. So the pulmonary arteries take blood from the right ventricle and they carry it to the alveoli. Gas exchange occurs at the capillaries that surround the alveoli. And what gases are exchanged? Well, oxygen leaves the alveoli and goes into those capillaries, and carbon dioxide leaves the capillaries and it goes into the alveoli. So now the blood is oxygenated, and oxygenated blood goes from the lungs via the pulmonary vein and it goes into the left atrium. The left atrium contracts, it pushes blood into the left ventricle. The left ventricle contracts and it pushes the blood into the systemic circulation and into the aorta. So the aorta comes out of the left ventricle and it carries blood to all the other arteries, which carry blood to the tissues. So at the tissues, another gas exchange occurs. The blood drops off oxygen to the tissues and the tissues give carbon dioxide to the blood. Now blood is carried from the tissues up to the heart. The vena cavae dump blood from the systemic circulation into the right atrium of the heart. The right atrium of the heart contracts, it pushes blood into the right ventricle contracts and it pushes blood into the pulmonary artery. And then the cycle starts over again. And this goes on and on every minute for the rest of your life. So ventilation and alveolar blood flow should be matched. So let's take a look at the structure of the alveoli again. So let's remember that the primary function of the alveoli is the exchange of gas between themselves and the blood. And alveolar cells are epithelial cells. They're very thin, that way gases can diffuse rapidly across them. There's actually a basement membrane that fuses the alveoli to the capillary, and there's a small amount of interstitial fluid in this area. That way there's nothing blocking gas exchange. So the closer the alveoli and the capillaries and the less barriers between the alveoli and the capillaries, the easier it is for gas exchange to take place. And this is a very, very important concept. You should star it, sing it from the rooftops, write it down, shout it out loud, tell your neighbor, tell your mom's neighbor. This is an important concept when we talk about heart failure and pneumonia and how that affects our gas exchange. Now, 80 to 90% of the alveolar surface is covered with capillaries, and this is necessary for the exchange of gases. So step 1 is get air from the atmosphere into the alveoli. And step 2 is gas exchange at the alveoli. And the way that gas exchange occurs is when the alveoli are perfused with blood. Now, what is perfusion? Perfusion just means that the blood flow is high enough in the capillaries that surround the alveoli, that way gas exchange can occur. So in order for our lungs to work efficiently, we need to get adequate air from the atmosphere into our alveoli, and we need to have enough blood flow in our capillaries. We call this a ventilation perfusion match. So the body actually has normal mechanisms in place making sure that it matches ventilation and perfusion. So how does this actually work? Well, if we have an alveoli that is not well ventilated, then carbon dioxide increases in that alveolus and oxygen decreases. When this happens, the capillaries that surround the alveoli constrict and blood flow goes to perfuse the alveoli that are better ventilated. So more ventilation to an alveoli means more blood flow to the alveoli, but less ventilation to the alveoli means less blood flow to the alveoli. Because think about it, when we're not ventilating well, we are decreasing our oxygen concentration and increasing our carbon dioxide concentration. This means that if we still perfuse or still have blood flow that's going around these alveoli that are not well ventilated, not enough gas exchange will take place, and blood will leave the lungs still deoxygenated and still filled with carbon dioxide, which means it can't bring enough oxygen to the tissues. If we are perfusing a non-well ventilated alveoli, we call this a ventilation-perfusion mismatch. So the body does its best to avoid this. However, sometimes a ventilation-perfusion mismatch is unavoidable, like in some conditions. And we'll talk about those conditions in later lectures. So let's recap. If there is a ventilation-perfusion mismatch, then what's happening is there is poor gas exchange occurring between the alveoli and the blood. In one type of ventilation-perfusion mismatch, we might be perfusing a non-well ventilated alveoli. When we do this, the capillaries that surround that alveoli are not getting enough oxygen. So blood is leaving the lungs still mostly deoxygenated. And what happens is this can actually affect our oxygen saturation in our blood. Now, what is an oxygen saturation? An oxygen saturation is just a measurement of the percentage of oxygen that we carry in our blood. And so if we are not getting enough oxygen at the alveoli because we have a ventilation-perfusion mismatch, then our oxygen saturation will drop. So ventilation-perfusion mismatches can decrease oxygen saturation. So I hope that content was helpful. Now you're one step closer to understanding lung physiology. If you got value out of this video, then tap the like button. And if you have questions or want to connect, then comment down below. And hold on, before you go, click subscribe and hit the bell icon so you're notified every time that I post. See you guys next video. Bye for now.